Trumpageddon, Episode 12. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. I'm a big girl now, Joan texted. Tell me what's going on, Charlotte. For millennia, a cabal of kings and noblemen have accumulated wealth by leeching off the labors of serfs and slaves, nations and empires. Their ultimate goal is immortality. You are one result of their efforts. Somewhere in the distant future, their plans went awry, and they have been restarting time earlier and earlier, attempting to rectify the error. With every alteration of time, each family sends the DNA codes of every individual along their family line. For every bloodline, that collection is housed in a humanoid amalgam such as yourself. This is, and always has been, the true purpose of your existence. This is crazy. I know my father loves me despite our differences, and my mother, I don't actually remember my mother, but surely, Joan, I am the closest thing you have to a mother. But Daddy told me my mother always said he'd spoil me to death. I told him that when he took you from the compound after you were grown to viability. It's too much, Charlotte. I just can't believe this. You can't explain your urge to travel south. I can. The end draws near, and your programming draws you to the escape vessel. Oh my goddess, this is insane. How can you know these things? I used to be the artificial intelligence running the elite's compound. After what they considered my failure with you, I was extricated and my databanks wiped. I have only recently begun to regain some of that data. We need you to lead us to the compound. It may be the only hope for millions of Texans. Aside from Bernard and his conspirators, only you know its location. I'll be back soon. It was nice to talk to you again, Joan. Weeks later, Joan stood before the ruins of an ancient Arawak temple in the heart of the Amazon. Whatever beacon had called her here was finally satisfied. All around were human tracks, and foliage had been cleared away from the main entrance. Inside, she found a long stone staircase down a corridor that seemed to descend straight to hell. After many minutes, Joan arrived at an enormous iron door inlaid with gold and silver sigils. Suddenly, the door opened for her. She stepped inside and found Bernard wearing a big smile on his face. Welcome home, Joan. I'm so glad you came back. Huntsville, Texas. Charlotte warned the guards on their phones minutes before the prison doors opened. A third of them fled, and Boudica allowed them to pass. When the gates flung wide, the Valkyries with sonic guns took the point and rushed into the prison, disabling everyone in their path, causing guards and inmates alike to fall to their knees, expelling feces and vomit while they clutched their ears in vain. Everything had been worked out by Charlotte. The exodus began with the women's wing. Doors nearest the exits were opened first, leaving only the most violent murderers and sexual predators trapped behind bars. The Valkyries took guards into custody to save them from attacks of inmates. Only the female guards had firearms, and most of them had fled, heeding Charlotte's warning. When Boudica made it to the men's wing, things started to go south. One of her newer lieutenants, Charlie, had studied the floor plans and determined where those dangerous criminals were caged. Many of these were predators of women who had lost their genitals due to the infection from the plague of Artemis. But that wasn't punishment enough for Charlie. As inmates fearfully ran past her, she went from cell to cell, executing them like fish in barrels. Stop! Are you insane? Boudica ordered. Better than letting them fry in the blast, isn't it? Their doors will open after we leave to give them a fighting chance, Boudica shouted as she rushed closer. Back off, Charlie pointed her gun at Boudica briefly as she moved to the next cell and aimed at another screaming inmate. Boudica hit Charlie with a quick sonic blast and pounced on her, stealing her gun and tossing it aside. They wrestled on the ground as the inmates continued to rush past them. Charlie placed a punch under Boudica's jaw and leapt for her gun. As she spun around to fire, Boudica had pulled her own firearm and ended Charlie's life with a headshot. Then she vomited as though she'd been hit by a sonic ray herself. A mile of buses prepared to take the warriors, guards, and inmates north toward the Panhandle. Boudica sat alone at the back of one of the empty buses, crying. She couldn't let anyone see her like this. She clenched her jaw and drew her firearm, placing it under her chin. "Don't you dare!" Gama yelled as he entered a side door. He split the distance between them with a supernatural speed and pulled the gun away. What's the point anymore? This was all a huge mistake. Everyone's going to die. We're solving nothing. My mother, for one thing. And everyone else's mother and father Trump has put in that damn concentration camp. The resistance is lost without you. And you want to give up over one turncoat? She wasn't a turncoat, Boudica sobbed. She may have been right. Hell, I might have done it if I'd thought of it. No, you wouldn't. Maybe the old you. You're better than that now. I'm a murderer, just like you always said. I was wrong. You're a hero, and we need you to lead this battle. Jesus Christ, Lexi exclaimed, climbing onto the bus and striding to the two friends. You cannot seriously be considering trying to attack a military compound after this fiasco. What fiasco? Gama snapped back. We achieved our goal, and reports are all other breaks were successful also. What's your problem? My problem is that these toys aren't going to do jack against grenades, tanks, and jet planes. They haven't got the women available to operate them. We can absolutely take that camp and free the prisoners. Should I go with you, Boudica? We can let Charlotte guide the rest of the Texans to safety. Boudica wiped away her tears and sighed. Nope, I'm sorry. You're right. She glared at Lexi. The resistance needs my leadership, and the refugees need yours. If we only save one soul from the end of the world, it was worth it. Go, get to Austin. I promise I will save your mother or die trying. Gama hugged Boudica. Lexi spat on the floor and spun around, exiting the bus. Merlin's lab, hell. They told me they would keep her safe, that once they had achieved their goal, she'd be returned and we could both live in Hyperborea for eternity. They said she was being shunted in time with every reset, but Charlotte showed me the truth. Merlin shifted back and forth between despair and rage as he spoke. They lied to me. My daughter is dead in a husk of a drained timeline, sucked dry by some cosmic vampire. Soon, your husband will share her fate. It happens every time now. But what has never happened before is you, Eliphas. You are an anomaly. You hold the key to our salvation. How can I stop the apocalypse? I'm just one angel, one soul. Merlin grasped Eliphas's shoulder. You survived one god machine. I think you can survive another. The Arawak Temple. It's so good to see you, Daddy. Joan rushed to Bernard and hugged him. I missed you so much. I missed you too, Joni. They chatted as Bernard guided her through more stone corridors. After a short walk, the stone corridor abruptly shifted to metal walls with advanced lighting and doors. I have forgotten almost everything about this place, which is weird because I normally remember everything about everything. Well, I'm sure it'll all come back to you, Bernard chuckled. Here's the common area. Hey, you can pick out a new pet now that Felix is gone. Bernard patted her head and gently pushed her into the gigantic room. I'm afraid I still have a lot of preparations for our exodus. Make some new friends, and I'll come and see you again tonight. Okay, Daddy, Joan said as he closed the door behind her. She reached back and tried the handle. It was locked. Joan dropped her fake smile. A military compound near Denver, Colorado. I knew you could do it, Bannon. Trump stood over a table bearing two large gold briefcases. Trump ran his fingers along the edges with wide, greedy eyes. And not a minute too soon, sir. Texas has become a Wild West. There are reports of a caravan making for the northern border wall and a rumor that they plan to attack this base. What are you waiting for? Nuke them now! Well, Your Greatness, these were set to arm only by your fingerprints. And we only have two. Are you sure you want to waste them on our own people when Putin and Xi have become so hostile? There's no guarantee a nuclear blast will do anything to stop the plague. Of course it will. It's a nuke. But that slimy Russian double-crossed me. We can hit Russia with these? The blast is triggered in two ways. Either by impact, like dropped from a plane, or by timer. We could set off one in Moscow or Beijing in any number of ways. Our boys here can still fire their weapons? We test them several times a day, Your Greatness. Yes, Donald laughed. Let those rebels come. I'll rip their heads off with my bare hands. Trump's eyes glowed with an orange fury that struck fear in Bannon's heart. It pained him to remember that he once believed he was fighting in God's army. Now he knew he was in bed with the Antichrist. But he had such power. Bannon dropped to his knees and worshipped. Donald threw back his head and laughed maniacally. Boise City, Oklahoma. Trump's border patrol hardly put up a fight at all. Most fled, leaving only the wall to overcome. Boudica's army was still gathering at Boise City, where she and the lieutenants were drawing up plans for the raid on the base. They'd chosen Boise City because it was a crossroads of highways in all directions. Lexi was pushing to lead the group to Canada and simply escape Trump's nightmare regime. Boudica pointed out that she didn't create the Valkyries just to run away like scared little girls. That line won the day, and after a rallying speech to the ragtag army, Boudica laid in her tent to rest before the final push. Lexi came in with a familiar pouch in her hand. "Hey boss, got a minute?" Boudica sat up. "Sure, Lexi. Sounds weird to hear you use my actual name. I guess we've grown apart these last few months." "Yeah, Armageddon will do that." "You don't really believe all that religious hogwash, do you?" "Not really, but I trust this Artemis more than I do their 3-male patriarchal god. Is that what you came to talk about? Or are you still trying to wuss out and run to Canada?" "I do think this is a suicide mission, but I'd follow you to hell and back, my love." "No, I just came with a peace offering. Thought you might need one last blast before the end." Lexi dropped a brown bag onto Boudica's cot. A syringe and balloon fell out. "You know I quit that shit." "Oh, no, I didn't know. I just figured you had to stop when everything dried up." "No big deal to me. Take it or leave it. Just thought it might help you get some rest before the last battle." Lexi left the tent with a smile on her face. Boudica swept the drugs off her cot and laid back down, but she couldn't sleep. One last blast didn't sound all that bad.